One of the things while I've got you, I really wanted to ask is there's this term that gets bounded around a lot in the charity sector at the moment called theory of change.
Mhm.
And it seems to tie up a lot of us in knots. So as we've got you here, I'd love to get your explanation of what on earth is theory of change and how should we be using it in an organization?
Sure. Thanks, Stuart. Yes, I do a lot of theory of change work, and I would certainly pick up the last part of your question first.
Yeah.
Not just what is it, but how should we be using it? So the key thing is to remember that the theory of change is there to serve you. You're not there to serve it. So if it ever feels like you're working with a consultant who's trying to put a theory of change together for you, and you just feel like I'm just becoming a slave to this thing, then something's wrong. But yes, using some of those terms that we spoke about earlier, typically a theory of change will describe what's going on with a journey of how individuals and cohorts of individuals respond to the challenges that are going on in their lives and the things that we're doing to help them. So you generally have the input end of the model,
Yeah.
where you'll be doing some kind of situational analysis. You'll be asking, who is it that this program is concerned with, or that we as an organization are concerned with? So is it young people? Is it older people? Is it people experiencing depression and anxiety? And then, okay, and what are we doing about it?
Okay.
So that you get a kind of middle piece of the model where you're describing the things that you're doing that you expect are going to make some kind of difference to these issues people are facing.
Okay.
And there's relationships between them. So you shouldn't have anything in that middle column that's kind of not linking back to the first column, because it's like, right, well, if they've got, we'll stick with our Weight Watchers model. If they're struggling with obesity, then, just getting them to kind of come to our book club,
Yes.
where we just sit around and have coffee and biscuits and talk about, we can't expect that that's going to make an impact. So our intervention needs to be linked in to the problem in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But then, we then link it, and then we do the so what. So the sort of final column is the outcomes column. Some theory of change practitioners will separate out the outcomes into short-term outcomes, medium-term outcomes, long-term outcomes. And then, that typically is the sort of theory of change model. Some people will put something slightly more sophisticated in there that they call change mechanisms, where you're really trying to get into the black box of why is this working? Because it's one thing to do it, to do the intervention and to get the outcome, but sometimes we're just curious about, I know this works, but why?
Yes.
And so you'll spend a bit of time fiddling that bit out as well. But you don't necessarily need to know why, but it can help. It can help convincing people that your intervention is going to be replicable and it's going to work in all sorts of circumstances. I tend to then do some further work following on from a theory of change, really unpacking what I would call the outcomes framework. So the outcomes end of it, I don't want to sort of leave a client just with a theory of change. We want to push it so we know for every single outcome, what are the specific, what are we really going to see change in someone's life?
Yeah.
How is that going to manifest? So the whole evidence thing, what tool are we going to be using to help us realize that? Because if we can't measure it, then we can't report it. And then ultimately also, and what system have we got? Kind of we get into the sort of CRM database end of it. So where's this data going to live once we've collected it?
Yes.
Because ultimately, if we can't report on it reliably, it's no good to us anyway. Yeah. So we kind of have a whole piece, and then it kind of becomes a bit of a feedback loop in the end, which is what really generates the insight. What you might see now, I see this stuff because I'm kind of cruising around the portals and picking up work on evaluations and things like that. In the old days, they used to talk about, even just recently, talk about M&E, monitoring and evaluation.
Okay, yeah.
You'll see that changing now. A lot of the specs will talk about monitoring, evaluation, and learning.
Yes.
And that learning piece is becoming really important within the sector now. Funders, commissioners, and obviously the organizations themselves, they want to complete the picture. Don't just tell us what you're doing, and actually don't necessarily even just tell us that it's being effective, but tell us a bit about maybe why on some occasions it's not effective. or for who it's effective, and help us to learn so that we can share that and we can all kind of grow as a sector and become more effective.